Okay, new microphone. I think we're ready to roll here. So, I talked about Arrow season two in my recent video that I just uploaded tonight, but I recorded a few weeks ago, and I think somewhere in there, I'm not too sure, but if not, I'm gonna say it now. Arrow season three, I think that's where people started to see the decline of Arrow as an entire show, and I'll get into why I think people thought as part of the decline. Personally, I'll say this right off the gate. I didn't really have too much of a problem with Arrow season three. I actually kind of liked season three. It introduced some new ideas to the Arrow universe because it was also the counterpart. Well, I should say the Flash is also the counterpart to Arrow. So now we're talking about superhuman stuff, metahuman as the universe refers it to. Um, so let's talk about Arrow season three. The basic plot. I actually loved the plot of Arrow season three. In that it creates this really good problem for Oliver Queen as a person, because he saw this lightness in season two that he found a way to beat Slade Wilson without killing him and without really killing anybody else. He found a way to he found a way to come out on top in season two, and that's kind of like a milestone for him. And so season three, the gap between season two and three, there's this like uh, peace period where there's almost nothing going on that's bad. Okay, and so finally, by the way, when I do these videos, I'm gonna do spoilers. If it isn't obvious already, I have a formula going. I don't really hold back on spoilers too much, but starting from season three and then season four of Arrow, and then probably the rest of the TV shows that I do, I'm going to talk spoilers because it's really hard to talk about a TV show without spoilers. Because spoilers for episodes, they're there. You know what I mean? Every episode has a spoiler, and so the entire series is just going to be a big spoiler. And so anyway, I'm just going to do a spoiler-filled thing if it wasn't obvious. So, season three, the very first episode, the ending of the first episode. In season two, Sarah Lance came back and she helped a little bit with the siege with Slade Wilson's army. In season three, the very first thing that happens is an unknown figure, an unknown archer, kills Sarah Lance. Sarah Lance is dead. Okay, and that's kind of the driving point for Arrow season three. Okay, now you guys see my dog back there? So the driving point for season three is the team is looking for Sarah's killer. Okay, now that's the jumping off point. Okay, season three starts with we're looking for Sarah's killer. At first, it was let's see, it's been a long time since I've watched season three. It was Vertigo. Oh yeah, because season two opened up the door to what is now known as Elicity, as I mentioned in the last video, or the season two video, and so now they're trying to explore this. Oliver and Felicity go on a date. The date goes horribly because of the new Count Vertigo. I think it was Warner Zeidel. The original Count Vertigo died in season two. Yeah, he died. The arrow shot him and killed him because he held Felicity at gunpoint, or at vertigo point, I should say, with the needles. So yeah. Anyway, the date goes terribly, and they kind of see that it really wouldn't work out. They kind of have like this mutual agreement, kind of, sort of ish, really. But anyway, I was going with the plot of the first episode. So up until the end of the first episode, there's really like no plot. It was just kind of like an episodic thing. It was the one-time thing. So now, the first half of the season, well, I should say until the mid-season finale, because episode 9 isn't the half of it. That's realistically, it's about a third. Um, Up until the mid-season finale, the plot, the big point is looking for Sarah's killer, as well as reuniting the team or the family and all this stuff. Okay, let's talk about some characters. Okay, so we have Oliver Queen, Stephen Amell. Just I sound like a broken record. He's still killing it as Arrow in season three, as Oliver Queen specifically. I can't say much about it. Like, good job. I don't know what else to say. I feel bad because it's a review, and so I can't really put my finger on what else to say. Just I'm beating a dead horse. Stephen Amell, amazing. Okay. Um, John Diggle, he is interesting in season 3, and we'll get to a little bit later in the later plot of season 3 as to why he's really interesting. Same with Oliver. We'll talk about like the main plot at the end of the season when I get into some characters here. So Diggle, I think he's a dad now. I think at the beginning of season 3, he's a dad. I haven't really checked, and I don't want to do the research for it, but yeah, he is or will be a dad. I know he's married to Lila Michaels. Not much to say about Lila Michaels' character. I mean, she's just kind of like, she's an Argus agent, and she's Diggle's wife. She kind of keeps Diggle grounded. That's all I can say about her. And then for Diggle, he's kind of yeah, he does have a kid, because I remember the very beginning episodes. There was like Oliver and Diggle were fighting because Oliver didn't want Diggle to get hurt because he has a family now, and so he's kind of interesting at the beginning of the season, but he'll get a lot more like seriously interesting at the end of the season. Felicity Smoke. This is when people, they started to see like the possible downfall of Felicity's character, and I can absolutely see why, because in season 4 we'll talk about that. Felicity, she is kind of melodramatic at the beginning of season 3. Okay, she's not too much though. She's kind of like it's just kind of okay, all right. The show kind of needs her to be dramatic, otherwise it wouldn't be that interesting as far as relationships and characters go. But there's kind of like this awkward tension between Oliver and Felicity at the beginning of the season, because the very near the end of the first episode of season 3 is where their date didn't they didn't see it as a possibility of working their relationship out. Interesting thing about Felicity's character is that she also she doesn't end up with, but she starts to get interested in the new character of season 3, which is Ray Palmer. Ray Palmer, played by Brandon Routh. He was Superman from Superman Returns. We'll give him a pass. I don't remember too much about Superman Returns, but I'm sure whoever's like a diehard Superman fan will remember that movie forever, because that's one of the worst ones ever. Yeah, so just he actually is really good, because he kind of matches Felicity's sense of humor. They're kind of like, not so much like this as much as they are kind of like this. I don't know if that makes sense or not. They fit each other almost too well, if that makes sense. He's really good though, and he's introduced in season 3 as to why he's doing this. We didn't really know, unless you knew about the comics, that Ray Palmer was the Atom in the comic books. You wouldn't have known that he was going to be the Atom until I think it was like episode 315, I think it was. It was a little bit later in the season, because he wasn't really needed to be. He didn't need to be a vigilante. I think you find out sooner, but I think it's like he's actually done and he's ready to be the Atom in 315. I think that's what it was. Yeah, so he has that kind of, he matches Felicity's sense of humor, and we kind of see why he is the CEO, and why he contested Oliver for his business. Oliver was trying to be the CEO of a business, and then he couldn't. He's basically bankrupt because Moira died in season 2. And Oliver couldn't really make time for a business because he was being the Arrow. And so now Ray and Oliver, Ray took Oliver's company. That's how that worked. Ray took it. He didn't do anything to it at all. Or Oliver didn't do anything at all. Ray just took the company. He bought it. He won. Like, he made a good point. Okay, Oliver didn't want to deal with that. So Felicity works for Ray now. That's that whole thing. Roy Harper, he was in season 2. I talked about him a little bit, I think, but season 3 is where Roy Harper, first of all, he actually becomes an actual member of the team. He's no longer on the Mirakuru. He's normal, but now he's just an archer. He's the Red Arrow, basically. He's Arsenal. He is really kick ass this season, not just physically, like he kicks a lot of ass too. But one of the things I liked, I meant to say loved, but I said liked instead. One of the things I loved about Roy Harper this season was that he was not afraid to stand up to Oliver. Okay, while they were friends and while they didn't really have an animosity towards each other, there's just some moments in the season where Oliver, he's going off the deep end and he's kind of losing himself in his own mind, and Roy has to like, in a way, he's like snapping him back into place because he's standing up to him, and that's courage. That's courage to stand up to your leader, not for the sake of animosity, but just for the sake of keeping him in check. And I really like that about Roy Harper, is that he's grown exponentially since season 1. He has grown phenomenally since season 1. So now season 3 is here, and he is Arsenal. He's a full member of the team. He's almost Oliver Queen level good of archery. He's really good. The interesting thing about season 3 is that, you know, with the plot, there's also, along with the whole looking for Sarah's killer thing, is that Oliver, at the end of season 2, Thea Queen, she goes away with Malcolm Merlyn, and that's left ambiguous on purpose because they rediscover that in season 3. I think it was season 3 episode 2. At the very end of the episode, we see that Thea she got a haircut since season 2, and she's holding a sword and she's fighting against the League of Assassins. Okay, and that says a billion and a half things. So now Thea's holding a secret, and the reason why she left Starling City, the reason why she left was because Roy broke her heart at the end of season 2 because he went off to fight Slade's army, and they were together, Roy and Thea, and he went off to fight Slade's army, and she was not okay with that because she didn't want him to get hurt. Okay, that whole thing. Her mom died, and Oliver was still keeping secrets, and Moira and Oliver kept a secret from her that Malcolm was really her dad. This whole just clusterfuck of reasons as to why Thea left, and so she went to, I think, Mexico, Corto Maltese, and so we find out that she was training with Malcolm Merlyn, and she now isn't like a master swordsman, but she knows. She's good. She, like, in a way, she can almost kind of keep up with Oliver. Malcolm, I guess they can kind of keep up with. She can kind of keep up with both of them, but it's debatable. She knows how to handle the sword now. She wasn't like this bratty teenager like she was in season 1, and she wasn't like defenseless like she was in season 2. Now she has an edge to her. Now she has this edge of like, okay, I can actually do shit now. That's really cool. So, that is an important part of the plot. So now we'll talk about a little bit about. Let's see, am I missing any characters? Laurel Lance is in here. I can't believe I forgot about Laurel. Laurel, at season 3, at the beginning half of it, because we'll talk about the second half in a little bit. The beginning half, she was the assistant DA, and she's grieving hard. She's grieving hardcore over Sarah's death, and then she doesn't tell her dad. Like, Sarah's death is totally left clueless to Captain Lance, and that's one of those things. That's one of the big gripes I had with season 3. Not as a plot device, but just because as a normal person, you should have told the father of the daughter who was just killed. You know, the dad deserves to know. That's how it is. But we'll get into that in a little bit. All these second half of the season things we're going to get into, because it makes for really interesting storytelling. So, yeah, Laurel Lance, she's grieving hardcore over Sarah's death, and then she's like rekindling with her mom. Laurel's rekindling with her mom about Sarah's death, and the mom knows, and Quentin still doesn't know. I forget the mom's name. I think the mom's name is actually Dinah, like it was in the comic. It's like the actual Black Canary from the comics. Yeah, this is Laurel. She's kind of grieving, and let's see, was that season 2 or 3 where she was an alcoholic? Season 2 was when she was an alcoholic. Yeah, I remember that now. There was a scene in season 2. There was a hallway scene. Anyone who's watched season 2 of Arrow should remember the scene of Oliver and Laurel in the hallway when she was boozing hard. Yeah. So yeah, now Quentin, he's mostly a second half character. He's kind of left in the dark. Poor Quentin. God damn it. Yeah, Paul Blackthorne as usual just kills it. All the actors kill it this season. Then you got let's see here, who was it? John Barrowman as Malcolm Merlyn. he's going to play a very key role in season 3. He's a regular for season 3. He was only he was a regular for season 1, kinda. I don't think they considered him a regular because he was the villain of season 1. Season 2, he was like a special guest star in a couple episodes near the finale and somewhere in the middle. But now season 3, he's a regular because he's a very key character in the season. And with that being said, now we're going to talk about the second half of the season. All these things that I've been saying up until this point, we're going to talk about them. So the main villain of season 3 is kinda, I mean, the main villain is Ra's al Ghul. Yeah, or Ra's al Ghul. I'm gonna call him Ra's al Ghul for the duration of the video. He's the main villain of season 3, and the reason why it's even declared that he could possibly be the villain is because Sarah Lance, when she died, word of it got back to Ra's al Ghul through Ra's al Ghul's daughter, Nyssa al Ghul, and Oliver. Everyone suspected that Malcolm Merlyn. Now that they know he's alive still, because at the end of season 1, Oliver killed Malcolm Merlyn, and he was only a ghost in season 2, with the exception of Thea. Thea's the only one who knew that Malcolm was alive because obviously he took her in. And so now they find out that Malcolm Merlyn's alive, and Malcolm Merlyn is like undoubtedly the one who killed Sarah Lance, and Malcolm denies it entirely. And so basically Nyssa al Ghul says, Oliver, if you don't kill Malcolm Merlyn, my father's going to wage war against you. Okay? And that doesn't happen. Oliver has absolute reason to believe that Malcolm wasn't the one to kill Sarah because let's see here, because Malcolm like swore on Thea's life, or it had something to do with Thea. Okay, because Malcolm was family to Thea but not to Oliver, that whole thing. So yeah, so now it's declared, it's marked. Now that they planted the seed for Ra's al Ghul being the villain. And the only next time we see Ra's al Ghul is in the mid-season finale, and basically, let's see here. We find out somehow or another, I forget how it is, but we find out that Malcolm Merlyn really was the one behind Sarah's death, but in a way that makes it so unredeemable. That was so hard. That was so like terrible. It was awful. Basically, Malcolm Merlyn drugged Thea, and Malcolm Merlyn recorded it, probably like on his cell phone. And so basically, in order to save Thea's life, because Malcolm had been trying to cut ties with the League of Assassins, he's terrified of Ra's al Ghul, and so he's been trying to cut those ties and get Thea and himself, Malcolm. He's trying to get them two free, and in order to do that, he drugged Thea, and he made Thea shoot Sarah with the arrows. So Thea is the real killer of Sarah Lance. We find that out in episode 9, the mid-season finale. Now Oliver, in order to save Thea from the possibility of her getting hurt from the League of Assassins, or killed probably, in order to save her, he has to challenge Ra's al Ghul to a duel. And this, I remember this being my favorite mid-season finale. I loved this mid-season finale so much because I remember watching this part of this episode, particularly for the first time, and I'm like, okay, so there's like 4 minutes left, and now we're on this mountain, and he's climbing the mountain to fight Ra's al Ghul. And I'm like, okay, how's this gonna end? He's probably gonna like win somehow. Ra's al Ghul is probably gonna have a revenge like plot, no one beats me type thing. That doesn't happen. I am so glad that they killed Oliver Queen. I am so glad that they killed him. Obviously, he wasn't gonna die. That was obvious. No shit. But like, still, even with that knowledge, there's always that possibility that we're thinking like, well, what if they did kill him? What if he really is dead? Obviously, he's not. But I'm glad, because Oliver has been training to be an archer his entire time on the island. He's an archer. He's not a melee combatant. I don't care what the show says up until that mid-season finale of season 3. He's an archer. He's not a melee combatant. He doesn't have like, I think the show said like 200 years Ra's al Ghul's alive. I personally think, because now that we know about Legends of Tomorrow, I think he was probably that whole 600 years thing like it originally was. And or was it longer than that? I don't remember, but I think it's longer than 200 years of just training and learning to be the expert the ultimate hand-to-hand combatant. Okay, and so they killed Oliver Queen in the mid-season finale. Okay, so now there's that, and uh, he is kicked down the mountain, and in the flashbacks, we'll start talking about the flashbacks a little bit. Basically, Katana, the character Katana, I think her name is Tatsu. She is in the flashbacks because now the flashbacks are no longer on the island; they're in Hong Kong. Didn't have like a huge problem with that, but we're gonna talk about it. I'm gonna cover everything else a little bit here. Tatsu Katana was in that part. I think it was Nanda Parbat, or no, it was off. It was an off-campus location. It wasn't Nanda Parbat. It was a random mountain. I forget where it was, but basically, Tatsu. Well, let's see, what was his name? Maseo. That's what it was. Um, Maseo finds him, drags him out of the snow, and keeps good care of him. And it's kind of left ambiguous, the relationship, because Tatsu and Maseo were husband and wife in the flashbacks, but now we see that they're kind of separated. You know, they're cold and distant towards each other, and that's that's small detail. That's like plot filler, pretty much. Um, Tatsu basically somehow revives Oliver. This is like one of the gripes I have with Oliver's revival, is that they didn't really say exactly how he was kept alive. They say how his body, they say it was somehow because of the cold, and that justifies the bleeding, and that justifies like the cuts that he had from Ra's al Ghul, the impale through the chest, but that doesn't justify him falling down a mountain. He fell down a mountain, and the only thing that they offered as an answer was that the cold. That's it. That's all they had. And I absolutely hated that part of season 3. That was pretty much like the only thing that I absolutely hated about season 3, was that they never really explained how he stayed alive. Never cared for that part. I had to let it go if I was going to continue enjoying my show. Okay, so I let it go. All right, whatever. So he's alive, and that was episode 9. Episode 10, we find out at the very end of 10 that he's alive because he was left ambiguous in the modern day. That is, no flashbacks, but at the end of the present day, we weren't sure if he was alive. We weren't sure if he's alive. Okay, the team has to go on. The team, because remember, episode 9 and episode 10 were like a month apart. In real time, that has passed. That's actually, yeah, it was real time pretty much. Yeah, so the team pretty much is coming to terms. Like, we think he's dead. Felicity holds on to hope, holds on that he might possibly be alive, and it's just dropped. Okay, because Malcolm comes into the foundry, says Oliver's dead, time to move on, and the team goes on as usual. You know, Roy and Diggle still go out in the field. They're still taking care of business, still being the vigilantes, whatever. And now Laurel has an interesting arc. Episode 10 to 12 of season 3 is it's a self-contained arc, and I actually kind of like this arc. It was Brick. Brick was the main villain of that little 3-episode arc. It was a really good arc, okay? And the reason why Brick was the villain, and Brick is very intimidating. He has this really intimidating game where he gives the person a gun, and he says, if you kill me with this, you win. And guess what? If you don't kill me, I'm going to kill you. I love that game, okay? Yeah, so Brick's the villain. And Laurel Lance decides to take up Sarah's mantle. Laurel Lance is now the Black Canary, but she's still in training. She doesn't just all of a sudden become a badass, because the whole season of season 3, to cope, she's like letting her anger out with like she's training with the comic book character Wildcat. I forget what his real name is, but she's training with Wildcat. He's a retired vigilante known as Wildcat in the TV show, but in the comic books, he's a southpaw. He's a boxer, or just a MMA fighter or something like that. So now she has that kind of training, and now she's kind of like in training wheels for vigilante school. So she's a Black Canary now, and she's gonna fuck up, and she's joining the team unofficially, okay? And they're trying to take down Brick, because Brick is part of the Glades. People are starting to notice that the Arrow is gone, and that's opportunity for Brick. That's opportunity for a bad guy to want to take over the city. And at the end of episode 12, basically, Oliver comes back. He stops Brick. This whole city fight thing, and everyone's so happy that Oliver is alive. Okay, everyone's happy. Like, Oliver's back. He's alive. There's no way he survived that, but he's right here. You know, that's Oliver's blood on that sword over there. That's incredible. And then Felicity, along with kind of the rest of the team, they kind of like shit on Oliver a little bit because after the encounter with Ra's al Ghul, uh, Oliver realizes that in order to like fully secure um, Thea's safety, in order to ensure her safety to the fullest degree, uh, he has to know how to beat Ra's al Ghul should the scenario come up again. And in order to do that, Oliver has to side with Malcolm Merlyn, the guy who fucked season one up, like, you know, who's a good villain in season one, and the guy who basically corrupted his little sister, his daughter, Oliver's little sister, into killing Sarah Lance. Oliver has to side with this guy, okay? Um, that puts a wedge right in the team. That's a whole drama-filled thing. Um, this is what I mean by that plot was getting very interesting. This is what I meant when when I said the plot was getting like very. So it started off with Sarah's killer, and they found Sarah's killer, which is Thea, and now Oliver can't send Thea to die, so he has to fight for Thea. You know, a fight against Ra's al Ghul. Oliver's killed, and now we're at the point where Oliver. There's a little saying, I guess it is, for the it's one of the rules of the League of Assassins, where if you do not fall or die by the sword of Ra's al Ghul, you become Ra's al Ghul. So basically, the real Ra's al Ghul is looking to be replaced, and Oliver is the perfect fit because he didn't die to the sword. Like, the sword didn't kill him. This is where some people started to have a problem with season 3. Was that's a direct Batman thing. Ra's al Ghul's purpose, pretty much in the comic books, was to run the League of Assassins, assassins being the key word, or the League of Shadows, or whatever. This group of killers. Batman's against killing, that whole thing, and so they're natural enemies. Even though Batman was the one who, or Ra's was the one who trained Batman, and Ra's wants Batman to take the mantle, but Batman is the expert fighter. He's the expert combatant in the DC universe, in the comics, that is. And so Batman beats Ra's al Ghul. Oliver does not, but Oliver doesn't die to Ra's al Ghul. That's where the show is taking this. Is that Ra's al Ghul has always wanted Batman to be his successor, and in this TV universe that can't happen because Batman isn't allowed. Okay, so basically, Oliver now has a choice to make. Okay, because Oliver is like seriously considering becoming Ra's al Ghul just in order to save his sister. He is seriously considering doing this. Now we're in episode 16. Okay, Oliver refuses at first, and it's not good. And so basically, Ra's al Ghul is framing the Arrow for being a killer once again. And so basically, Arrow is just dropping bodies. You know, not Oliver Queen obviously, but the Arrow is just dropping bodies. He's shooting people like in the throats and in the heads and in the chest and all that. He's killing them, and that's where Quentin lands. That's one of the things I wanted to recap on, was that Quentin lands. He's damaged. He now in the very, I think it was somewhere in the second or possibly the third act of season 3. Quentin finds out that Sarah's dead. Okay, that makes him he's boozing again. He's drinking. He's an alcoholic. So now shit's intense with him because he's a cop. Okay, he's now the captain. He's Captain Lance. Okay, he's the leader of the police. Okay, with the exception of the lieutenant. But so now we see that Arrow's dropping bodies, and he actually, because remember in season 1, like episode 4, was it 4? I think it was 4 or 5. One of those two. Quentin suspected Oliver Queen of being the Arrow. You know, it was a coincidence. Oliver Queen just recently gets back. The Arrow, or the Hood, just recently shows up. That whole thing. And Quentin was wrong. Okay, well, he was right. He was right, but he was wrong because, you know, evidence didn't match up and Oliver was good. Now Quentin is damn sure that Oliver is the Arrow, and he is hellbent on revenge. Oliver didn't tell Quentin, but more specifically, the Arrow didn't tell Quentin that the Canary, Sarah Lance, died. Because the Arrow, the vigilante, not Oliver Queen, that basically Quentin should have known the Arrow should have known to tell Quentin, but Quentin doesn't like that he didn't. And so now Quentin's like, okay, you're dropping bodies. You didn't tell me about my daughter. I fucking hate you right now. That's it. Get out of here, or I'm gonna call the police. I'm gonna get my guys right now. Okay, and basically now there's a citywide manhunt, and Oliver Queen is he's losing it. He cannot win against the police, and so they finally caught Oliver Queen. They caught him, and then let's see. No, is that season 3? Let me think here. I gotta think. That should have been season 3. Yeah, that was season 3. Basically, they caught Oliver Queen. He surrendered himself because now Quentin made it public that Oliver Queen was the Arrow, and so they had an arrest for Oliver Queen, and they brought him in as Oliver Queen. But then Roy Harper gets himself captured, arrested basically, because he confesses that he's the Arrow. And in order to not look stupid, Quentin can't say, no, you're the red one, you're Arsenal. He can't do it because that'll make Quentin Lance look stupid. Okay, that's why he doesn't do that. Okay, now Roy Harper's in jail. Oliver, Diggle, Felicity, and Thea are trying to figure out a way to get him out because Oliver would have never signed on for this plan. Okay, he would have never done that. That's ridiculous to Oliver. Okay, the rest of the team obviously signed on for it because Oliver was making the stupid decisions, and so now Roy's in prison, and they fake his death. Okay, Thea is heartbroken. Thea doesn't know about it at first. Thea is heartbroken. It's terrible. They fake his death, and so basically Oliver was left out of this plan, and so the Arrow is free, and I'm sorry, the Arrow is dead. I don't know why I said free. Roy Harper is free to do whatever he wants. He's tired of the vigilante life. He's gonna go somewhere else. You know, he's done with this whole vigilante thing. And let's see here, what happens? The Arrow is presumed dead, and so Oliver Queen is still alive. The Arrow is dead. That can't be. Quentin can't look stupid. That whole thing. And so now that the Arrow is dead, Oliver can't go out as the Arrow anymore. He can't use that outfit anymore. And because shit hit the fan, along with the fact that Thea was killed in episode 19, the very end of episode 19, Ra's al Ghul himself, in order to finally convince or blackmail Oliver into becoming Ra's al Ghul, he kills Thea. He basically leaves her dead. I don't know if she was ever killed or if she was just on the brink of death. But yeah, basically, in order to use the pit, Oliver has to be a member of the League of Assassins because there's a ceremony. And so Oliver, of course, being the guy that he is, in order to save his sister, along with all the rest of the shit has hit the fan, everything is just gone to shit, he takes the offer. Oliver becomes Ra's al Ghul. He takes the offer to train to become the heir to the demon. And so that's episode 20. Was it sooner than that? No, it was 20. I think 20 through 23. If not, it was 21 to 23. And basically, the finale was that there's a what do you call it? An aerosolized thing that kills, that whole city. Basically, the team, up until the last episode, the team actually thinks that Oliver is brainwashed. He does some fucked up shit. He captures Lila, Diggle's wife. He captures her in order to get Diggle to compromise about something. He does a lot of fucked up shit, and it's totally wrong, absolutely wrong. But we find out in episode 23 that it's what he has to do in order to. He had to gain Ra's al Ghul's trust because he can't beat him just by fighting him because he'll know he'll lose. Not until he gets training from Ra's al Ghul, not until he gets his trust. He'll strike him when he's down. That whole thing. And so the mid-season finale, basically, or I'm sorry, the season 3 finale, that it asks more questions than it does give answers. Okay, he kills Ra's al Ghul. I forgot to say when Oliver when the Arrow was part of the manhunt from Quentin, Ray had a vendetta for Oliver, for the Arrow. But when they presumed that Oliver was the Arrow, Ray had a personal vendetta against him because he wasn't a fan of Oliver's killing spree. And so basically, after Ray was convinced that Oliver wasn't actually dropping bodies, and then it was someone else. Ray was taking a part of the vigilante. He partook in vigilante business. He helped Oliver out in times when the Arrow couldn't be seen, that whole situation. And so now the Atom is a thing. The Atom, he's, at the end when everyone's captured in the prison, that's everyone in episode 23. At the end of 22, but in the first part of the finale, they're captured. Basically, for Ray's character specifically, after the finale, Ray's character dies. Supposedly, Ray dies because you see Palmer Tech's, like the top floor where the CEO sits. Palmer Tech is just wiped out. The top floor is just wiped out completely. There's that, and then the team kind of trusts Oliver again. They see that he's not a brainwashed guy, and so they start to trust him again. Everyone except for John Diggle. Diggle, he almost is hellbent against Oliver now because he captured Lila. Okay, so we'll talk about that in just a second. Basically, the team now has to take down Ra's al Ghul. They have to stop the Alpha Omega is what the virus is called. They do. Oliver kills Ra's al Ghul because now he's not the Arrow anymore. The Arrow is dead. Al-Sahim, which is the Arrow in Arabic, which is Oliver's assassin name, he is dead once he kills Ra's al Ghul. He takes Raz's ring, and now we're going to talk about the end of Season 3 and what it opens up for Season 4. Okay, so the ring, Ra's al Ghul's ring, Oliver gives it to Malcolm. So now Malcolm is in charge of the League of Assassins. That's talked about later in Season 4. We'll get to that when I do my video. Oliver is done. Oliver is done being a vigilante. He goes and he wants to be with Felicity, and because now they're a thing. Right before Oliver became Al-Sahim, they had sex for the first time. They lost their virginity with each other. They had sex for the first time. Those two, with each other, that is. Those two are together. Thea, she's joining the vigilante business because she had to help for the season finale. Because Roy Harper's done. He's someone else now. He's not a thing. He's not part of the team anymore. He's done. Which is really sad. I liked Roy Harper, but he was a good character while it lasted. Laurel, she's Black Canary now. She's pretty much full-blown Black Canary because she had training from Nyssa because they both had dad issues. Ra's al Ghul's a dick to Nyssa. Quentin and Laurel had their problems. They're falling out, so now they had dad problems. They related, and so Laurel got a League of Assassin training, so now she's a good fighter. She's a full-blown Black Canary by season 4. The interesting thing is Diggle. He's leaving, or he's not leaving the team, but he's done with Oliver. He lost faith in Oliver because Oliver was able to always find a clean way out of scenarios in the past. But obviously this was just way beyond Oliver's control. He had no control over what was going to happen, and so Diggle, he didn't like the way that Oliver had to do business. But Oliver did, and so now there's a wedge, and Oliver always wanted to keep everyone together. He wanted to keep everyone happy, and he failed to do that with Diggle. And so now the end of season 3 goes to Oliver and Felicity, and now they're together. They're a couple now, and so they're going away. Felicity and Oliver are no longer part of the team. Now you have John, Diggle, Laurel, and Thea. That's the team right now. Okay. So why don't people like season 3? Personally, I like season 3. Season 3 overall was good. Okay. People didn't like season 3 because it started to focus a little bit too much on the romantic parts, which if they didn't like season 3 because of that part, they are absolutely going to hate season 4. And I think that's the same people who hated season 4. But anyway, people also thought it was too comparable to Batman, which makes sense because they did rip off a Batman storyline, so that absolutely makes sense. But there's no reason to hate it. It's the show. The show has a creative freedom that they can do whatever they want with the show as long as it stays within the bounds of good taste. And since Batman isn't allowed on the TV universe, they can do that. They can do Ra's al Ghul and Oliver Queen instead of Bruce Wayne. They're allowed to do that. And for me personally, it worked. It worked. And for some people it didn't, and I guess it kind of makes sense as to why sometimes, or for some people it didn't. But I mean, that's really why people didn't like season 3 as much. They also didn't like how I forgot to mention, Thea finds out that Oliver is the Arrow. That whole thing, that she knows by episode 13. Okay, so she knows now, because obviously she had to be a vigilante herself, and so she joined the team. Yeah, so that's that whole thing. I forgot to mention that. But people didn't like season 3 because it took Batman. They just the writing got sloppy, I guess. I personally I don't see why people didn't like season 3 as much. Um, just people thought that it took a Batman storyline that they didn't like about that. I will say though, I didn't like the whole Oliver's death thing. They never explained that at all. I hated that about season 3. That's the only thing I absolutely hated about season 3. I hated that part. But other than that, there were some parts that were kind of boring of season 3. Season 3 just wasn't as adventurous because Ra's al Ghul. That's why in the beginning I said he was kind of the villain, because he was only in it in episode 9, like somewhere near like I think 14 and 15 maybe. He was around there, and then he was really only there pretty much his main appearances were episodes 18 through 23. That was really it. Okay, it wasn't even that. It was like mostly 20 to 23, and his first appearance was in episode 4. He wasn't a big driving factor until like the end of the season. That's why he wasn't really the main villain. It was mostly the team versus itself, or Oliver versus himself. So there were parts where it was going to be kind of boring, arguably enough, fair enough, obviously. Other than that, though, I didn't really have a problem with season 3. Season 3 was okay. I will give season 3, because of those boring parts and the Oliver death thing, I'm going to give season 3, I'm going to give that an 8 out of 10. I don't think it deserved a lot of the negative reviews that it got. But I understand, kinda. I sympathize, I empathize with why people didn't like season 3. I have my own opinions. The Batman storyline thing, that didn't bother me at all. I actually liked the way they did that. But it got kind of boring, kinda-ish. Somewhere through, like, there were some filler episodes. It's 23 episodes long. There's going to be filler, okay? That's obvious. That's fair, okay? And Oliver's death thing. What the fuck, man? Come on. So, yeah, so anyway, to round out my thoughts, season 3, I liked it overall. Could have been better, obviously. Season 4, I would imagine my season 4 video is going to be a little bit ranty, because I have some personal issues with season 4. I think I'm going to join those people who are starting to lose faith in the show. I like season 4 personally. It was good overall because there's a lot of things that they did right with season 4. A lot of great things about season 4. But the thing is, a lot of shitty things with season 4. There's almost like no happy middle, and if there is, it's filler. They're filler episodes. But before I do season 4, I said in my Arrow season 1 video, I have to talk about the Flash. So I'm gonna do the Flash next. I'm probably gonna record the Arrow video first, but the one I should upload next is gonna probably be the Flash one, because those two will go hand in hand. Then I'll do Arrow season 4. Then I'll do Flash season 2. Then I'll do Legends of Tomorrow season 1. And then from there, I don't have a schedule. I'll do whatever I want to do. So yeah, I think next will be Flash season 1, and then we'll talk about Arrow season 4. Just brace yourself for that one.